Today, it's Edwin's Monday evening property rant. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics, one that is post covering finance and property news. Yippee! Edwin's back for a rant. Hello, Edwin. Good to see you. Hope you're well.
Oh, well, mate, I'm very well. I got the final tests or part of the final tests today. I can't tell you, say it in breaking news. I'm not pregnant. I'm not carrying any aliens.
Phew.
Yeah, that was a good result there. That was a tight call, but then the horse tranquilizers and elephant antibiotics are still there for another few days.
Well, you sound and look good anyway, so that's the main thing. I have to say, Edwin, that I quite missed you. I did a couple of half a Monday evening property rant, but it's not the same without you, particularly now. And I just want to remind everybody as we go into this that, from a property perspective, the median house price relative to capacity to pay has really, really gone in the wrong direction in recent times. And we're going to talk specifically about some of the things that the government is doing, which you can sort of hypothesize about in terms of why they're doing it. But this is the fundamental problem. Property is unaffordable.
Yeah, and this is what people need to understand, and we need to and unpack. I mean, most of our followers and viewers, they understand this, and that is that a lot of the transactions are not happening with first home buyers per se, and they won't moving forward. The ones that are transacting are the upsizers, the downsizers, the Kryptonians that are cashing out, the others that have had other asset classes that are coming in with 30, 40, maybe 50% LVRs. In other words, they're only borrowing up to 50% or 50 to 60% from the bank, and we're talking about properties in the tune of 2 million, 3 to 5 million. It's interesting to know what's happening in that market space, who's moving there, the areas that are very contested are your first home buyer areas, and they become further and further away. We're a lot closer to not having any freestanding homes below the $1 million in the Sydney region. And regardless of the figures that are shown on the domain portal, because when you start looking and going through the lists there, you can see that a lot of them are underquoted in terms of the value proposition that they're guiding, and so I would dare say that we're sitting closer to the 300, 400 freestanding homes in the Sydney region under the 1 million, which is scary shit. And this is what the government doesn't understand. Now we're going to be obviously talking about the what I call the non-affordability, moving forward with home values. But again, I'm really pissed with the fact that we've got nobody's defining, none of the politicians, left, right, middle, whichever side, they're not identifying, or they've mystified what a home is. What they're pushing is totally different to what you and I expect a home to be. If anything, we should be standing homes, or the places with a bit of lawn in the back, as opposed to the dog boxes that they want to throw people into.
Yeah, well, it is, of course, about build, 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 and remember that the government is struggling to try and get the economy off the floor in terms of momentum. And if they can get more people to build, then that may help. But that means that the developers need assistance. Well, the main thing you can do to help developers is to flood the country with more migrants, so you've got more people looking, and then trying to throw money at people to try and actually get them to buy them. And it is worth reminding everybody that this is our taxpayer money that's actually being used by the government to create this Ponzi scheme continuing. And the latest announcement to Edwin on the home buyer deposit scheme, the 5% first home buyer deposit scheme to begin in October. It's going to be brought forward by 3 months, so you can get a first home buyer to purchase a property with just 5% deposit without paying lender's mortgage insurance penalty. And the government will assure the remainder of the deposit in the case of default. So, risks being put on the bank's balance sheet? No. Risk being put on the government's balance sheet? Yes. Because effectively, if property prices go down, obviously the government's going to take the hit, but also households have very little buffer because if property prices do slide, then they go into negative quite quickly. And in fact, you look at this in more detail. Sky's announcement came out first. From 1 October 2025, adds to the other moves. We'll talk about those in a second, like the construction code. But Tarek Brooker quoted this really interesting thing from the Productivity Commission. It is not typically home buyers who benefit from the assistance. It is the sellers who receive a higher sale price. And Cameron Kushner said housing prices are going even higher on the back of this. More demand side stimulus. Stimulus on this side just keep getting larger and more exotic. Shared equities start next year. And of course, the article here shows that even Treasury admits prices are going to rise as a result of this. Now, they only say it's 0.5%, not very much over the next 6 years, they say, but that's probably understating it. And they're estimating around 70,000 homes will be brought through the scheme in the next 12 months. So it's a bit of a mess, really. And again, I remind everybody that there are lots of people who were going to buy anyway who will now be able to take advantage of this. It's not going to help those who really can't reach the thresholds to be able to borrow, to be able to buy. And as you say, with house prices rising still in Sydney, particularly at the first buyer end of the market, it's not necessarily going to help those that need the help. And that's really the problem. So what I see here is effectively our taxpayer money being thrown into a sector of the market where there are already people going to transact. So the marginal impact is going to be perhaps moving prices up, but the real impact is it's not going to help those people from an affordability perspective.
No, and this again. We go back to the many times that I've shared on the Monday Evening Property Rant, and this is in the early 2000s when I was talking about the fact that the first homeowners grants that were being dished out from back then that weren't working back then, and they've never really worked. They come in different forms. I mean, right now we've got the gifts, and more gifts. It's Christmas in July. Or a bit of a late Christmas in July present for those that are looking to get into the market. But as you said, it's not the present or the gift is not for the first home buyers. They really need it, or those that want to transact and want to get into affordable housing. But it's for the property owners, your builders, developers, flippers, those that are selling off their investment properties, whatever the case may be. So they're the ones that benefit from this, and we've known that from the beginning. In the Australian Property Investor magazine, back around 2010. I wrote an article with respect to what happens with all these monetary all these money paper money that and promises that the government gives. What happens to home values when I compared the cost back then of building a 2-bedroom apartment in Parramatta, and back then I noted that I was the first to note, and I was the first to talk about it. Social media wasn't as explosive as what it is now, but I discussed it back then that the best value or the best thing that the governments could do was is to take away a lot of the taxes and imposts and duties that are paid on the way through by developers and builders in order to complete their projects. But it fell on deaf ears. I mean, I was only a small operator in the Parramatta region, and I mean, who was going to listen to me back then? When you say that now, people are, or all of a sudden we've got this, we've got this. what would you call it? Yeah, all of a sudden we've got this notion that, oh, hold on a minute, it benefits. We only just find out that it benefits sellers and not buyers. I mean, like I said, I've been talking about it for decades, mate. And when you back, I recall back then my figures came to about 37% of the value of or the cost to build a property, a two-bedroom apartment in Parramatta, yeah, post purchasing of land, 37% was made up you know, of taxes and duties and all that, which would add on to the value. And then after that, I was very vocal about the added costs of your marketing companies, and this is something that the government and the REIs haven't really tackled. They've just let it go under the hood. I mean, I just got offered last week. I got offered a 5% commission to start selling apartments off the plan to our client base in Melbourne. 5%. And I asked them, what's the average value? Hold on to your toupee, Martin. 750,000 for a one-bedroom apartment, 950,000 for a two-bedroom, and 1.2 to 1.3 for a three-bedroom. I'm not talking about sub penthouse or anything. I'm talking about the shitty ones in the middle of the tower. But hey, guess what? I get to pick up 5% if I sell any one of these. But I refuse them. My answer to the market at the last week was, let me ask you this: how many are you going to buy in the complex? And he said, "Oh, no, I'm not going to buy any this time around. They're just too expensive." Yeah. So these are all the added costs that people are going to be paying on the way through. So when the government starts throwing around all these other incentives, people are going to fall for it. And as you know, as you know, as a point now is we're talking about properties that will devalue over time, right? Because they're all focusing on new developments, predominantly high rise developments, apartments, and apart from everything else that's also come around many times in circles. And again, I was talking about in the early 2000s, and that is that most of the Sydney uh, uh, buildable land, you can't build high rise. The water table is too high to sustain. The land is it's too shallow to sustain high rise development without having issues down the track, and hence the reason why. I mean, there's a shitload of apartments that are uninhabitable that are being built, but they won't obtain occupation certificate because of the many issues. I mean, there's towers all over Balcombe Hills, Parramatta, that are still and have been for the last 2, 3 years under rectification work, and they won't be occupied. And the poor bastards that have paid a lot of money and are paying interest on an uninhabitable property that they bought off the plan 5 years ago. So this is the aftermath, and it's only going to get worse. These band-aid fixes are only going to get worse. I mean, as I said, I've been watching this. I've been watching this show for the last since the early 2000s, and I'm on my second repeat binge.
Well, I made a show over the weekend called Performative Politics Won't Solve the Housing Crisis. And you may see in this thumbnail, I've got red tape wrapped all around Canberra and, high rise construction left, right, and centre. The point is, this is not actually getting to the heart of the issue at all. And I get quite frustrated by the public perception about what's going on. But of course, the politicians love it because they want to be seen to be doing things. And so when you have things like, for example, Albanese is going to freeze the construction code until 2029 and fast track housing approvals. Well, yeah, just bear in mind that the standards in Australia are not great. There's a show that I referred to, and it's quite interesting how a lot of properties are actually cold, very, very cold in winter, right? The standards are actually not great at all. And as a result of that, you got to say that building standards aren't that flash. But the critical question is, you can actually say, I'm going to freeze the code, but nobody's policing the code. Nobody is actually making sure that the building that's currently going on at the moment is complying with the codes, whether they're the right codes or whether they're the wrong codes. So, you can talk about freezing the codes, but unless you actually get compliance sorted out, we're going to continue to have more duff high rise being built, which is again why it is that we're going to see the value of those properties fall. And, if anybody wants evidence of that, look at North Ryde units. Look at the trends there since 2017. They are continuing to fall. And in the area, we're having more and more high rise construction underway. People who bought previously are sitting on significant losses. The quality of the construction is pretty poor, and the strata fees are going through the roof. So this is the heart of the Ponzi scheme, right? And it's about who's making the buck on the way. Well, of course, the developers are, all the hangers on, all those getting commissions. But the losers are the owners, whether they're investors or whether they're trying to live in the properties themselves, because they're living in these dog boxes that are fantastically depreciating. And nobody wants to talk about this.
No, and this is the whole, as you said, there are a lot of there are a lot of leeches hanging on very tight to the high-rise development and marketing from your uh, accountants to financial planners, marketing companies to real estate agencies that push these dog boxes because there will be commissions to be paid, Martin, and on the way through, and also for the first 3 to 5 years of the life of the building until the strata manager then eventually bails out. The original strata manager sells off the strata roll. The property managers that are involved in that unit complex sell off their rent rolls, and everybody's and the owners are left to foot the bill after the third year because a lot of the statutory obligations that developers and builders have to maintain the building, they guess what? They run off scot-free because the strata managers and property managers that are meant to be policing the works and are meant to be providing the reports, proper and adequate reports in order to force the developers and the builders to do the rectification work. They're not done, and that is the big out. I mean, it's as I put out a post again years ago, over a decade, over 1.5 decades ago, and that was it's a dangerous liaisons between strata companies and developers and managers in general, and then you've got ongoing maintenance don't happen. A lot of these. The ones that are standing currently around Sydney, they're still owned by foreign investors. A lot of the apartments, and we need more foreign investors in order to bring, to basically buy off the plan, as I've said before. Hence the reason why this population Ponzi has to continue to grow as well, in unison, on par with the push for the construction, because otherwise we can't. They won't build, and we will, with the taxpayer, have to continue to fork out more money in order to get locals to buy or to be tempted to buy into these developments and speculate, because a lot of the time they are speculative purchases, and a lot of them then get stuck with it. Some are able to bail out. Others, moving forward, they won't be able to, like we used to in the past, when we speculated on new developments when you could buy them cheap. I mean, things have changed so much. It's incredible. But yeah, so the unfortunate thing is the first home buyers will continue to be thrown under the bus. And one thing for sure is that we know that the politicians are far removed from reality. Pausing the construction code is not the answer. As you say, policing it is the answer, and but also pulling back on red tape. And high rise has, in my opinion, in my life in the real estate industry and building and that is the it's about reducing the red tape, and high rise has never been the answer any which way anyway. Small to medium density was the proposal that I put in the early 2000s when I used to write about this stuff more prolifically, in my Facebook posts and things like that. But we didn't keep up with it because of your NIMBYs, and because people didn't want to, and also the other thing that's really been um, a thorn in on the side of development has been this push for the last 2 decades of heritage listing property willy-nilly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is an interesting article here from Michael Reed and John Kehoe talking about the housing code pause repeating mistakes. And they're quoting Ed Husick here, of course, the outspoken Labour backbencher who's now quite critical of this. The pause is basically, creating complications. It's potentially going to lead to higher power bills, the article says here. And the truth is that this is not actually going to solve the real issue. But, if you actually stop and think about it, I think this one sums it up quite well. This was an X post I saw. Rob Smith said, Housing Minister Claire O'Neill has said the housing problem has been brewing for 40 years. It's due to lack of supply. This total brain dead twit failed to mention the 1.5 million immigrants imported into Australia since Albanese took office. What a farce. And Sam's responded, she's one of the architects of Albo's mass immigration program. What she doesn't grasp is that housing supply will never be able to absorb 2% population growth, 90% via foreign immigration. The level of incompetency is criminal. And I think that sums it up quite well. This is deliberate. This isn't just an happenstance. This isn't just an accident. This is deliberate. And the bottom line is that taxpayers are paying. One of the reasons why the budget's all over the place is because, of course, they're spending big. And of course, recently there was an article saying, well, Labour won't clamp down on spending. That's not what was going to be discussed over the last few days at the Productivity Forum. No. There was agreement that expenditure growth was on an unsustainable trajectory. But, no, that's not what we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on doing those things that are performative, but not actually necessarily going to really help with the with the fundamental structural issue we have. And that's the problem I have with where we've got to, that everybody knows what the issues are and what needs to be done, but nobody wants to tackle those issues because they're either politically unpopular or they're actually not going to necessarily win the next vote. And Mims has come out and said, well, he's going to try and fast track the approvals to target homes. And here in regional New South Wales, you need a whole bunch of additional homes. I always think about this interesting observation. We're going to build big in regional areas. Where are the jobs that people are going to have to work with in those regional areas to be able to actually use those homes? And I don't think much people have thought about that, especially in the context of things like, for example, the recent closure of the last bank branch on the outskirts of Tassie. The regional story doesn't add up. So building there isn't necessarily going to go there in the right direction. And so, there's talk about building consensus on housing reforms, but these are not reforms. These are just tickling at the edge, tinkering, not actually dealing with the fundamental structural issues that we've got. And that's the problem I have, that effectively all of this stuff essentially takes us nowhere at all, doesn't solve the fundamental structural issues. And by the way, on government incompetency, this is an amazing story. Did you see this? This is the ABC today. Hundreds of homes for people with disabilities sit empty at the expense of NDIS participants and investors. And basically that's because of a whole bunch of issues that have gone on. So, let the government run a program, and the government, of course, stuffs it up as normal. So it really is a massive disaster area. And then, just to add insult to injury, let's talk about Woollahra, because Woollahra is now an interesting case study in its own right, right? They're going to actually build around an abandoned station, and it's going to revive the area.
Well, this is look, it is interesting. Just going back to the previous point that you made, Martin. This is with regards to the regional areas. One thing is that when you eliminate or when you start closing bank branches, that's made it very difficult for your small businesses. Your small shops, your small, all the businesses, your post
Mm,
offices, your um, uh, takeaway joints and everything. I mean, this is what the only thing that's going to be built in the regions, right, is going to be medium development, medium density development around your probably around Tamworth, around Singleton, and and anywhere else where we've got where we've got tertiary campuses. And also the army barracks, because now we're going to get 10,000 or so soldiers coming in, or people that can apply, up to 10,000 men and women that want to join the army. They can fast track their PR into from Papua New Guinea into Australia. Now, there's also I just saw off the cuff, in one of the posts that we're also going to be building home bases or some sort of bases for some AUKUS treaty that we've got. So we're going to be building for the American Army or soldiers. So how many more? So in other words, if it's to do with education in the regions, if it's to do with educational centres or barracks such as your Singletons and the like, and any other place where you've got barracks, well then there's your that's your development, but that doesn't assist the many that live the millions that live in the in the main cities such as Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane, where you've got this pretty much a crisis, across most of the eastern side of Australia and also WA. Outside of Melbourne, you've got major problems across the cities. Yeah, yeah. So going back to Woollahra now, Woollahra, you've got this proposal for for 10,000 homes. Again, they talk about homes. They don't talk about, I mean, they do talk about apartments here. Pardon me, but it's rather interesting when you start to unpack what it really means. And headlines are headlines, but when you start looking, a little bit deeper into it, you start getting a better idea. So most of Woollahra is or around the old station there is R3. It's about 200-meter radius or a bit less. That's zoned R3. Then R2, obviously, and R3 is really medium density, but it really has to be rezoned to R4 in order to move forward with the so-called 10,000 apartment proposal that Minz is talking about. So let's unpack this a little bit. So to rezone that whole area there, there's going to be a fight on the hands for locals, and that could take anything from 2 to 3 years just to rezone it. Obviously, developers are going to start taking options on some of the lands, but a lot of the land is going to go for huge bucks, because all of a sudden the yields have just gone through the roof, as they say. Now, then you've got, let's say, once it's rezoned and once you can start preparing for the development application, there's potentially another 2 years in planning, and getting all your drawings, all the reports, all the building guidelines, all your surveys, all your special reports, and so there's another 2 to 3 years. So we're already close to 6 years away from before we even get a bulldozer in there to start breaking ground. From excavation to completion, you can bet your bottom dollar that it's going to be closer to 6 years, but I'll say anywhere between 4 to 6 years, depending on the size of the buildings. And it'll be more, as I said, more closer to the 6 years because of the navigating through the traffic controls and everything and all the works. I mean, it's going to be a mess there for a good 10 years. Um, so that's that's 10 years 10 years away before you get your keys, if everything goes according to plan. Um, Now, but I think more importantly, let's start looking. Let's look at the current sales there of apartments that were built in the 60s and 50s and 60s and 70s, two-bedroom apartments. So I figured out that currently in that area, a two-bedroom apartment on average is about $1.6 million. That's the old style. I can guarantee you bottom dollar that we're going to be moving closer to your 2.3, to anywhere between your 2.3 to 2.5 for a two-bedroom apartment that's going to be sold off the plane. A one-bedroom apartment, you're not going to be able to touch it for under 1.5 to 1.6 million. Um, so obviously that all depend on the bells and whistles that you get for it. So look at some of the figures there, Martin. Yeah, a two-bedroom apartment just got sold for 3,100,000. One bedroom for 1,130,000. Two bedroom for 1,400,000. Another two bedroom for 1,500,000. That's just a quick search on Price Finder, and that's what you've got. So are these? Well, is this? How many first-time buyers are going to be jumping in at these sort of prices, right? So you've got to really be a diehard Eastern Suburbanian in order to want to buy there. But I reckon my figures are conservative. So my prediction is the average apartment cost there, when you start averaging it out across the ones and threes, you're going to be looking at an average price of 2.3 to buy a 221, which is a two bed, two bathroom, one car space. But the interesting point here, as I was looking through the numbers there, you also got to look at the sizes of these apartments. These apartments only, they're the older style apartments. They're around 58 square meters internal for a two bed. That's your average size. And the average size two-bedroom apartment that'll be sold off the plan for under the new developments, I can't see them being greater than 62 square meters for your average, the average apartment. That's pretty small. I mean, back in the early 2000s, I was involved with a project in Homebush West, where the average size there was 63 square meters was the average two-bedroom, and they are tiny. They are tiny. Dusty's not around, so I can say it. You couldn't swing a cat in any one of the rooms of those apartments, and that's all. That's what it's going to be. So who's going to? How many 5% deposits are going to buy into these developments? And I mean, but again, we're talking about delivery. If things do happen, we're talking delivery of no earlier than 10 years from now. So in the meantime, what are people doing? Sleeping in caravans and in tents or in their cars. So the question is, when will people actually get the key, and how many will be first time buyers?
Well, I've got the theory here that this is deliberately set so that effectively the data for the census won't include, because of course they won't survey people living in tents and living in informal housing and living in cars, right? So they don't want those in the census, right? So that census is going to run in the next year or so, right? So they want to push it down the road, but they want to be seen to be doing things. Now, when you start pulling this apart, you got to say this makes very little sense. And the story here is performative politics again. That people are going through the motions. They're doing this because they need to be seen to be doing stuff. This isn't going to solve the right problem. And what it's actually doing is building greater problems for later, as far as I can see.
Yeah, look, you only have to look at you only have to look at your surrounding areas in order to see what the values of property and what people are paying to get in. And as I said, a lot of it's only your highline stories that where you got millionaire mum and dads that where little Johnny and little Mary, get help to buy a $3 million bedroom apartment in the eastern suburbs. But not everybody's got that kind of money. Not first home buyers. I mean, this is pie in the sky shit. Um, if anything, a lot of these areas should have, will accommodate, in your medium density developments. You could build the old set, 55 apartment complexes where you had 45 in a complex, sprawled out, and you had plenty of room for the retirees and your downsizers to occupy. Set 55, meaning you own the property, or you occupy the property if you're over 55. So it was a succession plan, or a plan to downsize, to keep the communities, um, you know, uh, you know, because as I said, the people that are looking to downsize want to downsize in the area where they grew up. These are people that spent 60, 70 years of their life in the areas, and they don't want to go out to Liverpool, Campbelltown, or Raby, or St Clair, or Busby, or wherever to retire in, when they grew up in the eastern suburbs. Some village out at Whoop Whoop. That's what they want. Hence the reason why there's very little transactions, and the numbers that we talk about say a lot as to what's happening, what's at play. But there's this push from the government to bring in, to start construction, and they just keep on throwing more, as Matt Barry says, more kerosene at the issue, by jamming down this immigration lever, and much more. They just keep pouring kerosene on the problem. I liken it more. They keep on pouring more napalm, because napalm is more of a generational poison, and the aftermath is more generational than pouring kerosene over a fire. So this is what we've got. So we've got uh, politicians that are very distant. And what I'm noticing is more and more over the last, being in and out of the bedroom, in and out of bed, watching the antics of the political persuasions from the left and the right, is they all want to be TikTok influencers. They all want to be more, Swifty supporters and TikTok influencers, and be be promoters, or whatever they promote on social media platforms, and podcasters post the tenure as politicians, because they can, because they've got a sweet deal even when they retire. But it's more about likes and clicks than about actually doing something for the community, which is really, they're really gaslighting us, right? They're really out. That's all they want. This is it, Martin. Um, you've got, everybody's pushing to be social media stars, from the current housing minister to Albo and Co, and the new young so-called guns in the Labor Party, as well as the Liberal Party, and every other party. It's crazy shit. It's being sidetracked with the being a social media influencer, rather than going down in history as being an influencer that influenced the way the nation moved forward in a positive manner, to help and support the Aussie battler, and the working force that kept these bastards, and keeps these bastards with a pay packet week in, week out.
Well, 2 points, Edwin. The first is the 1.2 million target, which probably is unachievable anyway, will be predominantly these high rise dog boxes, right? So basically, these are very small, poorly built apartments that are going to have a very short life and are going to be very expensive to maintain subsequent, but nobody sort of wakes that up. The other point I'd make, Edwin, is that the analysis I've done recently on the down traders, so these are the people who are actually in properties that they know is a bit big for them, and they quite like to actually move to somewhere smaller. There's about 1.2 to 1.3 million down traders out there at the moment, according to my surveys. But over the last 12 months, the proportion of those down traders who actually moved, despite the fact that quite a few people are looking, has dropped dramatically. And when you actually tease that out, and I've done quite a lot of work on this through my surveys, there are 3 points that come up. The first is there is nothing in the immediate area that is of interest or the right type of property for those people to downtrade to. Secondly, the transaction costs to downtrade are actually relatively expensive, and that's of course agents' fees and stamp duty and all of those things. And then the third is, which is coming out more and more, that there's a bit of a sense of, well, I quite like the space I've got, and if I'm going to move to somewhere smaller, I still want room to be able to swing a cat or two. Sorry, we won't mention the cats again.
Hey, don't worry, they're asleep. They're asleep.
But the point is that people quite like space. So now, of course, the response to that we're getting now is, well, why don't we tax the spare rooms, right? That was one of the things that was discussed in the productivity session last week. It's been spoken about before. We got to force people to move into smaller places. We've got to force people into these high-rise dog boxes. We've got to force people to release the larger properties. But again, I have to say, when you start thinking about the spare room tax, it's not straightforward, right? How do you define a spare room?
This is the interesting. First and foremost, the interesting thing is that these bastards again, and the right are no better, um, have the gall to actually think about in this, in this committee. Think about you think about the invasion of privacy, how they want to conquer, everything, and they're all in the same boat. I don't give a shit who you're backing, whether it's an independent or anything. Yeah, the Greens, the Teals, the lefts, the rights, and everybody else in between. I mean, they should have all walked away from when this was proposed. But here we are. We're actually talking about it, Martin. This is the scariest stuff, that we're actually talking about it. We're getting angry about it, but in the main, the younger generation think this is brilliant, because it's going to force their parents, grandparents, uncles, aunties, onto the smaller dog boxes, so that they can then get a quicker inheritance. These younger generation don't know what's coming. They really don't. They really don't know what's coming. I mean, I was very young when I left. When I left, I had no choice. My mum and dad said, I said, but I don't really want to go to Australia. I was 8 years old. I said, I don't really want to go to Australia. I got all my friends here, and they just said, shut up and keep swimming. So, I had no choice, man. Don't know how I got here, but I got here. But you know, but growing up, you hear the stories about, and then again, my family were very much in the social political scene in South America as well. A lot of it was very much left wing influenced by fascism, by communism, by socialism, whatever, you name it. We were there. I mean, for a long time. I mean, as you grow up, whether you're hardcore fan of Fidel Castro or Che Guevara, it's you could say it's in, there's smidgens of it in our DNA. But at the end of the day, it's not pretty when the government owns everything and you own nothing, and you're at they can literally walk into your house, walk into your grandmother's house, and turn everything upside down just because they can, or just because they want to. And you don't know what the army is doing. You don't know what the police officers want. All this sort of shit. People don't know. As I said, I was very young, but I still remember a lot. The stories, the many things that I saw, witnessed, experienced, read about growing up. But here we are. This is frightening. Here we are, but yeah. So there are many questions, and we got to unpack it. But again, I want to put out there. I just want to, be very transparent. There's a conflict of interest here at the moment with myself and this proposal. I want to declare it up front, Martin, because I'm setting up a task force that I'm going to pitch to Albo and Co. Real Estate Office, that I'm pitching through a proposal to be the police on the ground to go knocking on doors and checking to see how many rooms are vacant. But, this is the crazy stuff, right? I mean, we joke about it, but we're talking about it, Martin. We're talking about it. I mean, who's going to police this shit? Are we going to have a $30 million task force set up just to go out there and knocking on doors? Uh, you know, um, is the empty room going to be taxed on the value of the property, or is it going to be taxed on the size of the room? What are the parameters, Martin? Um, or my guess is, right? My guess is that um, we may spend a little bit more than 30 million. We're not going to set up a task force per annum. That is, we're not going to set up a task force. We're going to spend a little bit more than 30 million, but it's going to be a lot easier. And that is, we're going to pay neighbours to dob in each other. So there's going to be a reward system. That's my call, right? And you've heard it first on Walk the World, DFA Monday Evening Property Rants. My call is that you will get you will get food stamps, or you will get some sort of reward if you dob in on your neighbor if they've got a spare room. So neighbors are going to be dobbing on neighbors. Let's think about it. That's the easiest way, right? The quickest. But there's the third option. And if you recall, there was a story a few weeks ago back where the Victorian government, the police force, asked the police commissioner or whatever, they were asking the residents to be able to tap into the camera system, the security systems. I don't know if you recall that story, Martin, but so could be that they were already planning for it, and just putting my conspiracy hat on, Martin. That could be another way. They just log into the camera system and your surveillance in Woollahra. You've got immediate knowing what bedrooms are empty. But what about the variables, right? What about the variables? So can you say that, hey, it's not a spare bedroom, it's my home office? Or is a bedroom a bedroom a bedroom? And even if you say that it's a home office, you're still going to get taxed on it. And there's the other variables, of course, that what if you were using the property as a budget accommodation and you turned the lounge room into a bedroom, and you turn the hallway into another bedroom, and so in other words, you created extra bedrooms because your budget accommodation, that's what it's all about. So uh, does it then, is that it then? That means that your lounge room is now a bedroom, and therefore you're going to be taxed, or can you revert it back to a lounge room after? I mean, this is mind-boggling stuff. I mean, this is the shit I've been thinking about in bed. So, and what about the garage that got turned into a studio or a granny flat, right? So that is it no longer a garage, or is it now a granny flat? It's an extra bedroom or a studio. So it's an extra two bedrooms or a studio, one bedroom, or can you revert it back? Do you have grandfather rights to go back to it being a garage and argue your way out of paying that extra tax? They're just my thoughts, Martin. What are yours?
Well, it is quite interesting. But going back to the article, this was in The Age, I think, more than 60% of Australian households contain only one or two people, but new research shows most homes are family size. To define that, it's not clear to me how they define family size. But I quite like your immediate response because Albo, of course, has just bought this big property up the road, right? And it's got what, three spare bedrooms?
Yeah, yeah, it's got three spare bedrooms, right? It's a four-bedroom
Exactly.
house.
So is he in as well? Because if he's in, well, maybe. But no, this is a fundamental problem, isn't it? When you start having government interfering with your own life and your own life choices, and to be honest, I've got quite a big place here because I've got my studio, I've got my music room, and they're separate parts of, of what I've got, and yeah, I rattle around a bit, but I'd rattle around because I got lots of different interests and I need lots of different spaces to do the things I want to do. But they should get out of the road. They shouldn't be sticking their nose in and saying, "Oh, you've got one too many units. You've got one too many bedrooms here. We're going to charge you." This is about revenue raising, and I want to come back to the productivity conversations because the bottom line is, and it was quite clear through the 3 days of the chatting that went on around productivity, that really it was all about effectively finding more ways to tax people. And from the superannuation tax raid, which is clearly coming, through to anything else under the sun. And the bottom line is, government should get out of the road and should stop spending way too much and then trying to find ways to actually cover that high expenditure by inventing new ways to tax, from road tolling through to bedrooms taxes, and through to all that sort of stuff, spare room taxes, etc., etc. And of course, the other one, which is going to come at some point, is death taxes. Right, clearly, death duties and all those things, they're going to bring that in as well. And the argument will be from the government that this is all about intergenerational fairness. Right, this is about the young people not getting a fair share, and the older generations have had it too good, and it's all their problem. So we're going to actually intervene and sort of tilt the balance. Now, I agree, youngsters have had a really bad run, but it's because of bad policy over 40 years from the government. They created the problem in the first place. And then turning around and saying, "Oh, well, we need to actually tax people more," is disgraceful, because what it means is that it gives them more latitude to spend ever more without actually dealing with the structural issues that we keep touching on, migration, energy costs, and the red tape that's all over government. So I'm afraid that I get very frustrated with this debate, and yet I must say that in the mainstream media, there's very little pushback on this, other from just a few different sources, on the idea of ever bigger government, ever more interfering in our lives, and of course with the digital ID, tapping into your door phone and everything. I mean, these things could happen, right? And I'm thinking, 1984, we're just around the corner.
Yeah, what I can say is that if Dusty and Evan rat on me for having an extra studio, they rat on me and I have to pay. We have to pay more. Yeah, those little bastards, they're gonna regret it. So I've already put my foot down. Said, if you want to continue to get your fancy treats, well, mum's the word. No telling our whether we got a spare room, a spare studio. But you know what? The interesting thing here, Martin, is I can guarantee you, I can bet you bottom dollar that that the political class, amongst the elites, or those involved in the in mainstream media and that, they're going to be exempt one way or another from these extra taxes. I can bet your bottom dollar. I mean, that is just a given, because otherwise they wouldn't be pushing this as hard as they are. And the other point there is, with your surveys, your studies, and what we've discussed over the years, and that is, the younger generation don't understand that if you're going to be pushing the older generation out of the homes to downsize, and forcibly pushing and using that, and having this argument and fight, with your boomers and your zoomers and your this and your that, they don't understand the fact that, hey, when you start pushing your retirees, your empty nesters, into downsizing, as I keep on saying over and over again, and listen to me very, very, very clearly, they will not venture more than 5 kilometers where they grew up unless they really have to, which means that they will be buying the older style apartments, they will be buying the smaller homes, they will be buying the smaller villas and townhouses that are available, and your smaller duplexes that are available in your local communities, and which will drive the prices up. And the homes that you think that you're going to be buying for $3 million are going to be worth $6 million by the time these transactions go through. because because it's a rising tide. You start to raise the value of the lower end properties, and guess what? The higher end will also go up in value because they become more desirable. I mean, but they don't get it. They don't get it. It's just a fight. It's just a fight on social media. It's again, it's all about likes, reshares, retweets, reposts, whatever, whatever, whatever. But and they go around in circles, and it's a shame because most of these so-called property punters, spruikers, and commentators know shit about the property market, but yet they're out there, swinging the tongue around like like a donkey in a hot summer's day.
A lovely picture. And let me say, I have had this view for some time that there is a concocted fight going on between younger generation, older generation, which the politicians are actually using as
Of course.
misdirection, right? It's the older generations that it's their fault why we've got the problems we've got. No, no, no. Let's be clear. The politicians are using this to mask 40 years plus of bad policy decisions from both sides of politics because they have done the wrong thing for Australians over that period of time, right? And now they're looking for excuses and they're looking for scapegoats and they're looking to blame anybody but themselves. But the truth is, the politicians have created this mess, and it's because they didn't listen. You and I have been talking about these issues for a good number of years. I did my first interview on this problem, the housing problem that was emerging in 2001 on the ABC, and I spoke about the problem that first-time buyers are going to have because of the policies that were coming through at that stage. Nobody took any notice. I kept talking about the problem with prices bubbling up and getting more expensive relative to income. Nobody took any notice. Politicians didn't want to know about it. And now, of course, they've got this massive problem on their hands and they're looking to divide and conquer. They're looking to basically say, oh, it's their problem, not our problem. And I think that's just absolutely disgraceful. And coming back to your other point, I will remind you that many politicians have a separate pad in Canberra because, of course, they have to be there in Canberra when the Parliament is, present, only for some of the year. And I guess they'll have exemptions on that as well. So, it's going to be one rule for them, one rule for everybody else. And I get really cross about this. And unfortunately, it's more of the same old, same old. And on the same old, just before we close off, there's another same old here. More bad behavior from the real estate industry itself.
Yeah, it's they can't help themselves. It's bad habits, man. I mean, I think there was a song about it. I'm not sure. Um, yeah, uh, and looks like we've got another agency in Quakers Hill wanting to take the mantle that old mate Josh had to relinquish, and but this guy's really pushing it up there as well, and you see what things have been quoted for and guided for, and then post the auction. Failed auction campaigns, $300,000 later or $250,000 later, it's or close to $300,000. It's still on the market for sale. Um, but you just have to look at the data that we've got available. Fair Trading's got available. Obviously, these are paid subscription data that we get, and you can see the history, and you can see that old mate Josh was trying to sell this, um, back, uh, back in December 2023, for $200,000 more than what was being guided. Now, this is the result now that we've got. The thing with this particular property that's of interest, and apart from the fact that, as I said, it's we got a new player there or an older player that wants to take the mantle of underquoter of the area, is the fact that I put a post on X and I said that if this house sells for less than $1.2 million, I will be eating one of Dusty's cans of dinner live on the Rant, Martin. So I've got my fingers crossed. He hasn't sold yet. He hasn't sold yet. and the guide is at 1160, I know that somebody out there that's going to support the cause, and they're going to offer an extra $200,000 and an extra $40,000 and make an offer at 1.2 and save me from eating Dusty's dinner because we don't want to see Dusty starve in the next week or two.
No, and just to be clear, the earlier price was what 1.2, and then of course the latest one is under a million, right? So we're all over the place.
This is the thing. It's in your face, regardless of the fact. Look at the media. Look at how much Sydney Morning Herald, third page news, double spread on underquoting how Sydney became, is the underquoting capital of Australia, and is that. I mean, but I keep on saying. The story shouldn't be about the one individual, old mate Josh, that got caught. The story should be about the 999 others that have got the middle finger up at the regulators, in the regulators' face, saying, "Catch me if you can."
Absolutely. Well, that's his, and eventually maybe a few will get caught, but the again, the supervisory processes and the inspectors, they're not able to do the job that they should be being done, and of course, agents just go around them and carry on regardless. As we come to the end of the show, we'll just quickly catch the numbers because it's quite interesting. If you look on the 18th of August, 20,274 sales for sale in Sydney, and that includes houses, apartments, and all the rest. This is based on the domain definition. If we go forward to the 25th, 20,353. Now, it's also interesting. Let's go back to 2024 when there were 18,099, which just shows you that there's been a bit of a change. And interestingly, of course, if you look at the mix of numbers there and where we are now, things are quite different, aren't they? And this chart, of course, shows it another way, which is we're still tracking higher than last year.
Yeah, and I had to do an apples and apples comparison, Martin, because it's been I've been again, I've had a little bit more time on my hands, and so I was able to track back to the snapshot of the around the same week of 2024. So in 2024, we had around 1,300, 1,300 blocks of land for sale. We currently have 2,834 blocks of land for sale. Right? Back in 2024, we had 7,829 homes. We currently have 8,319 homes for sale, freestanding homes. 7,923 apartments back in 24. Now, currently, we've got 7,951. So the numbers, on the surface, it would seem that we're tracking greater numbers in terms of in general terms, but when you start breaking it down, and as we like to look at things, granular, you start to notice that the fact that the number of blocks for sale in terms of land value are more than doubled, and that's what's carrying the numbers a lot higher in 2025 currently than in 2024, and that is very concerning because it gives you the numbers give you the impression that there's a lot more properties on the market, but the ones that are on the market are the lemons that people have offloaded. People are keeping your A, double A, triple A listings. They're not selling, or they're getting top dollar for them when they do go up for sale. And the numbers are being masked with the actual number of land envelopes that are on the market, and nobody wants to build them. And that's a key there, that nobody wants to build them, and they're just growing. But it's giving you a distorted view of what's really happening. And this is why people love our show, because we look at things granular and we can split it open. And there was some posts on that I got tagged on X, And I can tell you, in one of the people that was asking Tarek about what's happening with the numbers. I know the area that this individual is looking at. It's in the Southern Shire. He wants to move from a two-bedroom to a three-bedroom. I can tell you now, talking to the agents in the Shire, anything that gets put up that's three-bedroom plus, it just gets snapped up really quickly, and it's sold. A lot of the times, it's sold in the off-market campaigns before even hits domain and real estate. When agents have this off market with because they've got enough people to have a bidding war before the property owners spend their 15,000 to 20,000 dollars on marketing, and they're achieving great results because people have been confused and thinking that there's a lot more being dumped, a lot more properties being dumped. We're obviously going to see a lot more properties coming up to spring, but people have got to be wary as to what type of properties are going to come on in spring. And I get this feeling, that it's going to be your great opportunity to offload lemons.
Yeah, there are plenty of lemons out there, and of course, the only thing you can make with lemons is lemonade. So just bear that in mind, folks. In terms of in terms of
And it
Melbourne,
can be bitter.
yeah, absolutely, throw in lots of sugar. On the 18th of August in Melbourne, 24,928. Following week, 25,345. So it's continuing to rise. And again, it's worth highlighting. I think that the number of houses there are still quite high. And again, more lemons. There are so many lemons that you can smell it coming into Melbourne Airport now. And in Brisbane, on the 18th, 3,200. A week later, 3,206. So not much change there. And on the auctions front, well, the story is the clearance rates are very high. No, just look carefully, look at the numbers. The numbers show that auctions are definitely going off the boil still. And Edwin's chart here just highlights the fact, compared to last year, the number of auctions are down.
Yeah, confidence is low, continues to be low. It's the method of sale by sale that people are waking up to, and I'm glad to, and I hope they continue to wake up to this and don't participate by way of being a vendor and by way of being a purchaser. But it's something that it's uh, sugar to termites, to ants, and also cocaine to the addict, and stamp duty to the politicians, auctions to agents.
Very good. Yeah, and just on the numbers here, this is the value tracker, and you can see there that houses have ticked up a little, but apartments are down a bit. And if we come briefly to the rental story in Sydney on the 18th, 10,798, compared with 10,579 on the 25th. In Melbourne on the 18th, 11,655 compared to 11,408 in Melbourne. So things are still looking pretty bad for those in the rental sector. And I still am getting stories, Edwin, of more rental increases. And a lot of those rental increases are for existing tenants, and they're being pushed by the agents, as we discussed in the previous show, rather than actually necessarily the property investor themselves. The agents, of course, want to lift the rent because they get a bigger rent roll as a result, as we discussed recently. So that's part of the motivation there. And it's a very interesting conundrum for people in the rental sector who are struggling to know what to do. Do I just pay up and stay, or do I look for something else? And of course, in many areas of the major centres, there's massive amount of demand for rental accommodation. But just to say, rents are still going up, and I don't think the advertised rents that are quoted in the mainstream media are telling the full story on the rental story.
No, no, there's a lot of pain out there, and as you said, and people are paying it. People are choosing to stay, and this is why, but moving forward, again, when you've got the amount of new people coming into the game, coming into play the game, where you got to ask yourself the question: where are they going to be accommodated in the future? Where are they going? Where are they currently being put up into? Where sooner than later, um, uh, sadly, we could see those numbers drop potentially by 50%. And it's absolutely carnage. But it's again, where are they being housed? Right? When you've got this sort of the amount of numbers that are coming into, as with the, with the immigration lever that's been pulled, um, how's it all being absorbed? I know in a lot of cases with the, a lot of the Indian communities, the Southeast Asian communities, you've got the, that will live two, three families to a house. Because they're comfortable. They're not they're not against it. That's the way that they save. Families living together. I mean, that's what my parents and my uncles and that did in the early 70s in order to to bounce from a shed house into their own apartments in your Meadowbanks and a bit further out, and then move on from that to moved up the ladder to your subdivisions in your Kings Langleys and Kings Parks and your down in the Campbelltown regions as well. So that but and yeah, I can see that that's happening more and more. And obviously, the Asian communities are okay with that as well. When you've got generational living, hence the reason why the bigger homes, the attractive homes, the finished homes, the pre-did up homes, they go for a pretty penny. When you've got a two-family household, even a three-family household moving in and footing the bill, and our pacing, our pricing, those that are aspiring to get into these areas.
Absolutely. Well, as we come to the end of the show, Edwin, two observations. The first is, of course, you've got a book behind you there, the Bitcoin uh, story,
Bit of light
right?
reading.
Yeah, Bitcoin standard. Well, you had a chance for some light reading because you were forced off work. But there's a very important point here, and your tip for the week is, I think, one that people should really take seriously.
Yeah, in with regards to that, yeah, like you've heard of the old expression, running on empty. And I liken it to running a diesel truck, a diesel engine. With when you get to the bottom, if you start running that baby on empty, you're gonna have major problems with your injector as well. Yeah, we do the same thing to our bodies, and unfortunately, that's what I ended up doing. I'd ran it for too long on empty in the winter that we just had. So it was a nasty July, August for me. I confess, I overdid it, overcommitted, trying to get projects out, and more importantly, again, it's a confession, and that is that I didn't take the right precautions in the on the work sites. As you know, we not only help our our clients look for property, but we also assist them with the renovations of moving forward in order to keep costs down. And unfortunately, in two occasions, one over in Leichhardt and one over in Blacktown, I attended the worksite when I was run down, got too lazy, didn't wear the right PPE gear, whilst assisting the boys, to move things along, because we had to get shit done before, because it's hard to find crews, and when you find them, when you get them, you've got limited time. But um, I let my guard down, and I was already running on empty, and only to end up pouring more shit into my fuel tank, and only being to be absorbed. Hence the reason why I trashed my lungs. So I think at the end of the day, as much as we talk about it, like I think the final straw that looking back now as to what I was doing in the interim and why I got so sick and got the infection and then moved its way into the lungs was the final trying to help the carpenter under a house where you know I thought I had the right gear on, but obviously it wasn't. I wasn't well protected and trying to rush things. Just breathed in a bit too much mold than what I should have. And who knows what's on the houses these days as well. So yeah, so that's my confession, and I hope people out there don't, sort of slow down, take a step back, and we just can't afford to run on empty because things. I know things are tough, and we got to hustle. As I said, 2025 was the year to hustle and to really and to make things happen because things are getting tougher, and from everything around us, things aren't broken as yet. Sadly, I wish they would break finally so that we can start repairing in terms of the the national landscape of affordability and everything else. But these bastards are going to take us all the way to 2026, 2027 before things really break and snap and the majority wake up and start taking action.
Yeah, when that's a very important point you make there. And, my observation is that it's really important for people to think about their health and and it's a tough time, et cetera, et cetera. But if you don't look after yourself, then you can't look after anything else or anyone else. And I remember when Jill was, seriously ill for 5 years or so, one of the things that I had to try and do was to maintain my level of fitness to be able to look after her. And that was actually one of the biggest challenges because, of course, you have to take time for yourself and you have to say sometimes, no, I can't do this. And that's a really quite a tough thing to do. But it's really important because you have to preserve your own sanity and own health to be of use to anybody else.
Yeah, and totally. Look, I do, love and appreciate those around me. Our a number of the audience, our audience, got a hold of my email and obviously through my social media accounts, and they sent their well wishes. Consistently, friends that we have, also, clients that have become friends over the years. So the support team that we have, the DFA family and and extended family, obviously Dusty, Evan, and the gang and the crew from Ribbon Property were all very very supportive. They covered a lot of what I had to do, and also the builder that I'm currently working with. He was he's been very supportive. So yeah, but like you said, if we're not 100% ourselves, how can we try and help others? And it's I saw the many years that you went through as well, and commendable. And yeah, I think you can agree with me, Martin, that it's the love and support from the extended family that we have online and around us that really keeps us going. And hope to be here for a very long time to come still.
Absolutely, yes. Well, we do appreciate all of those comments and best wishes that were sent through various means. I got a lot too, Edwin, for you as well. And it's great to see you back and firing on all cylinders. And I'll look forward to another rant next week when, of course, the government will continue to be able to give us plenty of material to rant at. So I look forward to that. Have a great week.
Thanks, Martin. But I say it again. I can rejoice and be happy I'm not pregnant.
Nice thought to end on. Take care. Bye bye.
Take care, man.